Hello, I'm Maria Hall Brown, and this is LA Currents. Well, here we are on a bright, sunny Southern California day. We are here at the North Hollywood Tiny Home Village. I am delighted to be joined by the Executive Director of Hope of the Valley, Ken Kraft, as well as the Maintenance Manager here at this Tiny Home Village, Joe Armendarez. So nice to have you both here. This is incredible. I mean, what you think and what you feel and what you realize when you show up is amazing. Hi, sweetheart. May I pick you up? Excuse me, for half a second, I got a friend. How many tiny homes are there here?
Well, this site right here is the very first tiny home community in the city of Los Angeles, and it's in Councilman Paul Krikorian's district, and this is on Chandler Boulevard, has 39 units and 75 beds. And since this one was opened up in February, we've been able to partner with other council districts and open up another 3 tiny home communities, and then we're slated for another 2 to open before September.
Well, I'm sorry, I'm a little distracted because one of the residents, just a darling little puppy, just came running by. People are wondering what the heck I'm doing. But this is really, it's delightful to see for a number of reasons. I mean, it does feel very calm, very relaxed, very homey, and it's got, you know, fun colors and lots of assets. What are some of the attributes of this particular area?
Well, having a facility like this is absolutely essential in our fight against homelessness. Historically, the big push has been to get people into permanent housing, which I'm all for. We need permanent housing, supportive housing, affordable housing. But oftentimes that takes a long time to build. There was the bond measure that passed in 2016 to create 10,000 units of affordable housing, but the first units weren't completed until January 2020. That's almost 4 years, and when that happens, it's just too long of a time. And so the streets cannot be the waiting room for permanent housing.
No, they can't. And I'm sorry, I gotta get them. There we go. Okay. Okay, so the streets cannot be.
They can't be the waiting room for permanent housing. And so the ability to construct rapidly, to deploy interim housing, emergency temporary housing, is part of the solution here in Los Angeles to get people off the streets. Because the longer people stay on the streets, the worse they get. Their mental health deteriorates, their physical bodies deteriorate, they become hopeless. There was almost 1,400 people who died on the streets last year. And so this becomes part of the solution right here. We get people off the streets, and once they're here, everything that they have need of is here. They have showers, they have mental health services, substance abuse counseling and treatment. They have housing navigators. There's a shower hygiene trailer. There's a dog park for those that have dogs.
Yes, exactly.
There's 3 meals a day. Anything that somebody has need of is available right here to help them end their homelessness.
And along those lines, we are next to a bus route, so some of the sounds we're going to hear. But Joe, this means a lot to you because you came to Hope of the Valley as not necessarily somebody who was working for the organization, but somebody who needed the help of the organization. Where were you in your life, and how did your interaction with Hope of the Valley kind of flip things around for you?
Yeah, I was homeless before I even knew about Hope of the Valley. I was going through a divorce. I ended up, making some wrong decisions in my life, and I was actually living out of my car. And that's when I came across Hope of the Valley. And before I met Hope of the Valley, I was hopeless, and very discouraging. And living on the streets, it's not easy. It's not easy at all. And there wasn't this type of opportunity at that time when I was in 2015 when I was homeless. But I came across Hope of the Valley, and it changed my life. It changed my life. I mean, who can say what better example of what opportunity that I've come across and had because I met Hope of the Valley. I met Ken and I met Hope of the Valley.
So what was it that flipped for you? Was it that somebody treated you with respect? Was it somebody gave you a chance at starting fresh? I mean, what was it that really redirected where you were going, because you're a bright, intelligent man. Things obviously had gone awry in a number of ways, but you couldn't manage it yourself. What happened that gave you the courage, the strength, and the fortitude to be able to do what you needed to do?
Yes, I was shown some respect and some love, you know, and I keep saying it, but I was given another shot and I was given hope. Before that, I was hopeless. I didn't believe in myself. I thought of suicide more than once. I just gave up on life. I was very discouraged on just living life on life's terms. And what changed for me is that I realized that there were people out there and organizations that do help people in my situation, and that give me an opportunity to make the right choices, because there are those resources out there, you know, whether it's substance abuse, mental health, housing, you know, and permanent housing. You know, I'm actually in permanent. I'm actually married and have a totally different life now. You know, and 6 years ago, if somebody would ask me, you wouldn't have these same answers from me.
Right. Well, and that's one of the things that I mean, it's a crisis across the country. It's not just here in Los Angeles, but it's a multitude of issues. I mean, there are people that you said had mental health issues. There are people that have substance abuse issues. There are people that just literally don't want, you know, to change their lifestyle. And then there are those that just need a direction, that need the support. Is something like this a catch-all for everybody, or is it better for one particular crisis scenario than another?
What we found is most people, when they're living on the streets, they're not really living, they're existing.
Right.
Where am I going to go to the bathroom? How am I going to clean myself? What am I going to eat? It's an exercise in survival every day. And so, but when we can bring people inside, all of a sudden their disposition changes. Their thought process changes, because instead of being in survival mode, now you can start to think about next steps, that, you know what, maybe I do have a future. Maybe there is hope for me. And we see it again and again. Whenever people come in here and they're able to sleep at night with a locked front door, so they're incredibly safe. There's a single point of entry. There's no drugs, no alcohol, no weapons allowed on site. There's air conditioning, so they can lay down and they can sleep. And so what we do is, with the outreach and engagement teams, we will go within a 3-mile radius of this particular site, and we talk to everybody that we can find that is homeless, that is living in an encampment, living in their car, and we say, look, here's the benefits. And we run through all the incredible benefits to live here. And then here's the requirements. There are some expectations. And by laying it out there, we find that most people want this. They don't want to continue to languish on the streets. And so once we can bring them in, then that process of healing starts. I'll never forget the first person that was, because we opened this in February, the first person that was going to be placed into permanent housing. All the residents lined the streets right here, this little streetway, and applauded the person. Why? Because that's the dream and the hope of everybody else. And they figure, if this person can make it, I can make it.
Right.
And being here is, you've won the lottery, because this is going to get you on that pathway towards wholeness and housing.
Okay, so let's talk about the practical nature of this. Limited amount of, I mean, although it's large and there are a lot of homes, tiny homes, there is a limit. So there are requirements. So what are the expectations of somebody that moves into this property, and what are their requirements to be able to stay here, and how long can they stay? What are the basics?
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, they have to want to end their homelessness, because this is not their forever home. Okay, this is interim bridge housing. Our goal is to get them into permanent housing. As a matter of fact, so far this year, we've placed 88 people into permanent housing out of interim housing. and 97% of them are still housed today.
Oh, good.
So we know the process works. But once they come in here, they will meet with the case manager. And that case manager will say, do you have your birth certificate? Do you have your social security card? Do you have your state ID? And we'll get all their documentation so that ultimately we can get them jobs and get them into permanent housing. So it starts with a willingness to improve their lives. If they want to come here and do just nothing and not want to improve their lives, ultimately this may not be the best site for them. But then once they're here, then we work with them to help them get a job. We have job specialists, so job placements. And then we have housing navigators that will find out what level of income do you have? Do you have any basic income? Are you working? And how much can we then put towards your housing? And then they will go out, our navigators, and be talking with landlords and people that have places to rent, and they'll link the two together until we can get them housed. The question that you asked, how long can somebody stay here? There is no limit as to how long someone can stay here, as long as they're putting forth effort to end their homelessness.
Okay.
We are not looking for perfection, we're looking for progress.
Okay.
Now, it's interesting that, sometimes people say, well, what happens if somebody uses? Well, we're going to work with them. Okay, we're going to help them. Oftentimes people say, well, you're going to kick them out, right? No, we're not going to kick them out. I often say, can you imagine what would happen if anybody who drank alcohol in their home or got high in their home, we told them, you now have to exit your home and live on the streets.
Right.
Can you imagine what would happen to the homeless population? But when someone is homeless and they've been traumatized and maybe they do have an addiction, we bring them in and we're expecting them to live perfect lives. Not going to happen.
Right.
But we're going to work with them. And as we do, all of a sudden, we can offer them the treatment, the detox, we can offer them the mental health, and we begin to gradually see people get better and better each day.
Are you allowed to stay all day? Because one of the things that happens in a shelter scenario and that has been problematic, although it's great that there are shelters and I'm not saying anything derogatory about them, but there is that line up, go in for the night, leave your things for the night, grab your things the next day and head out again. If I am someone who moves into one of these homes and I'm exhausted beyond belief, can I sleep for a week?
Yes.
Can I stay all day?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, this is your home. This is, like one person told me who lives here, he goes, I feel like I live in my own private gated community.
Yeah.
And they do. They can come and go as they choose. All right. Some of them work night shifts, so they might be sleeping in the day. Other people, they're going to go out, look for jobs. They're coming back. The only thing that we do require is when they come in, we do check their belongings and we pat them down to make sure that there's no drugs, alcohol, or weapons. We want to make sure this is a safe place for everybody that's here. But there's no restrictions on coming in and going out. Matter of fact, as you walk around, you'll see some folks, they have plants in front of their places. They're hanging plants. They have little chairs out front. And this is their community. This is their home. This is their place of hope.
Right.
And it's actually a beautiful thing.
Do people ask you questions?
All the time.
Yeah?
Yes, they do.
And I could, Ken, you're a delightful person, but you're still an authority figure when it comes to this facility. And Joe, you understand, the plight of some of these people. So what do you tell people when they come and ask you questions about, I can't figure this out, I'm not going to get anywhere, I don't have any direction, I'm not sure. What do you say?
That's exactly what you say. I try to send them in the right direction and then try to give them encouragement, And then if they do ask, some don't ask me, but the ones that do ask me, I try to set that example and give them my story, my testimony. And it's really just speaking the truth. I'm not putting anything extra on it, not taking away from it. I'm just saying exactly what happened to me and try to give them hope,
right.
and let them know that there is hope and there is opportunity out there. If they want it, it's here for them, all the resources that they need.
Okay, so I have to say, however, that this is a public-private partnership that you have worked out with the City of Los Angeles. There are some, pretty specific contract, foundational things. But Hope of the Valley is a faith-based organization. And that may be something that people might be uncomfortable with if they don't come from that background or they have a different faith. How does that work with the people that become that move in?
That's a great question. At Hope of the Valley, we are an inclusive faith-based organization. So we have people on our board of directors of Christian faith, Jewish faith, Muslim faith, no faith. And when we say we're a faith-based organization, we believe in the inherent value and worth of every individual. We believe that God genuinely created all people and that we need to love people, serve people, help people, empower people. And so when people come in here, we want them to know that they're genuinely loved and cared for. Now, before we ever received $1 of government money, I asked the question, because I had to, what are the restrictions and requirements, given the fact that we're a faith-based organization? And the answers that I got, they said there's two things. Number one, you cannot mandate that somebody has to do anything in order to receive services. I said, okay. What's number two? They said that you cannot discriminate against anybody for any reason. I said, is that it? I said, that's it. And so that's who we are. We don't mandate that somebody has to do anything. You know, let's just say that there's a group wants to come and offer prayer. Wonderful. But you know what? People just, if they want it, they go. If they don't, they don't. We would never require that of anybody. And so we feel like we've really found this healthy mix that if somebody wants more of the faith-based element, they can participate. If they don't, they don't. There is no discrimination against anybody for any reason. We love and care for all people equally.
Okay, so these properties are being built with city funds, and this is the first, and there are more that are being A, built or B, planned. Your organization has not only these facilities, but also shelter facilities and food banks and thrift stores. And is it getting too big for your organization to manage, or are you feeling confident that you're going to be able to continue to grow and to assist all of these people?
Yeah, well, we are very grateful for the public-private partnership that we have with the City of Los Angeles, because we would never be able to do what we do or on the scale that we have done without that partnership. And so typically what happens in a site like this, the City of Los Angeles, this is city land.
Right.
And so they found it, they identified it, they had the Bureau of Engineering design it, and they put it out and they had it built. And then once they got the certificate of occupancy, they then gave us the keys and said, Hope of the Valley, get it ready to open. And that's where Joe comes in and his team, because they'll come in, make sure all the Wi-Fi is in, the video surveillance is in, all the tables are in, the desks, the chairs, that every one of the units have the mattresses, the sheets, the pillows, blankets. We get it ready and then we open it. Now, has Hope of the Valley grown? Yes. But a year and a half, 2 years ago, I could tell that this is going to be a time of growth and expansion, and we needed to get ready. We needed to build that internal capacity so that we could grow, so that we could scale our operations. And that's exactly what we did. Even in terms of how we staffed and how we structured, from an executive team to senior directors to managers, to supervisors, we built an infrastructure that could withstand the growth. So an example, at the end of 2020, Hope of the Valley had 9 shelters, 507 beds. At the end of this year, we will have 16 shelters, 1,532 beds.
And you're okay with this?
Not only am I okay with this, it's not enough, because what drives us is the need. We have to look at the need. And I don't want the shoe to tell the foot how big it should be. I think the foot needs to be the determining factor, and the foot is the extreme need. We are in a crisis right now with the numbers of people living on the streets. It is a humanitarian crisis, and now is the time for extraordinary efforts. And I believe that we're in a position to make a difference along with other great service providers, but we have to have this continuum of care here in Los Angeles, starting with outreach and starting with prevention, and then people are homeless, outreach and engagement, and then getting them into interim housing, and then all the wraparound services, and then moving them to permanent and permanent supportive housing, and then sustainability.
Okay, but I am going to play, a little funny to say this to a man of faith, I'm going to play devil's advocate, because there is the issue of not in my backyard. And frankly, my niece, I thought, said something incredibly profound when this was about to open. She said, I don't understand not in my backyard because they're already in your front yard. So how is this freedom to be able to build these properties on city-owned properties, how is that faring with the neighborhoods? How is that faring with those that are housed in the vicinity?
Yeah, well, I've been on more Zoom calls, more neighborhood council calls in the last 2 years than I ever have in my entire life. And that's because there's a lot of concern.
Mm-hmm.
There's fear, there's
Sure.
apprehension. So what I've had to do is make sure that the fear is overcome with facts. And so oftentimes people are afraid that, you know what, if you build one of these, there's going to be encampments all around, which there's not. You can go look. If you build one of these, people are going to be using drugs in our neighborhood. Well, they're already using drugs in your neighborhood, but they're using less drugs once they come in here because they're getting the help. And so, you know, people's biggest concern, and oftentimes they'll say, what about my property value? You know, it's going to drive down my property value. And what we're finding is it's not the case. I mean, when people walk through a tiny home community like this, the first thing that they comment on is how quiet it is and how peaceful it is. It's amazing the transformation that happens when you give people dignity and you get them off the streets and you give them a place to call home and you give them a launching pad into their future. And so the fears are very real. The fears have been vocalized. I know some city council members have had protesters outside of their houses yelling and screaming with megaphones, and that's unfortunate. I think we need to have dialogue and communication. I liken it this way. I think there's two models when it comes to homelessness. There's a stadium model and a Starbucks model. A stadium model is, you know, it's a skid row. You know, everybody gathers together in a stadium, all together. Or you can have a Starbucks model where every community, every neighborhood needs to do their part to address this humanitarian crisis. Many hands makes light lifting, and when every community steps up and says, I want to be part of the solution, then it works across
Right.
the entire spectrum.
Well, you know, you mentioned fear of the neighbors, but there's also fear of those that have to live on the streets. And, you know, it's a double-edged sword, and there's a lot of, there's two sides. Were you afraid when you were living in your car?
Oh, it's yes. It's a yes. I mean, like Ken said, where do you go to the bathroom? You know, where do you park? You know, where do you stay at? Are they going to look at me? Do they know? Or they're looking at me? They know I'm homeless. You know, I'm an outcast. You know, yes, they're definitely fear. You don't know what one night or day brings to the next.
Mm-hmm.
And let me just add that, and there's a lot of stories in these tiny homes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, one story I'm aware of a woman who was sleeping in a wash, and someone came with a knife, slit her tent open, raped her. And after that, she started wearing jeans that were 3 sizes too small, just to fight off any would-be attacker. When she was told about this site, she was apprehensive and fearful. But she came in, and when she saw there was a front door that locked, that there's video surveillance, there's guards, 2 guards on site 24/7, she'd give it a try. I talked to her the next day after she spent the night, and she had tears in her eyes, and she said, "It's the first time I've slept through the night, and
Wow.
I can't tell you how long, because
Wow.
I actually felt safe." There's a lot of violence that goes on, even in the
In
homeless
the
sector.
encampments, right?
And so when they come here, that safety, again, it's refreshment to the soul that now I can actually move forward with my life.
Well, we're going to walk around and look at some of them, but I do have my last question for Joe, because you have a responsibility here, and you know, it's beautiful here now because it's new. Are they hard to maintain?
It's a challenge, but I mean, I have a team. I have a really good team. I have a lot of support, and it's a challenge, but it's not impossible. It's normal maintenance.
So people who move in have pride of ownership, and they basically are taking care of them. Have you noticed that overwhelmingly, or you noticed
Yeah,
that
I
there's
mean,
an adjustment period?
Not everybody, but you know, I mean, like you said, some people even put flowers and plants and decorate it up. I've seen some. You'd be amazed at some. There's one in Tarzana. We just opened it up, and this lady is amazing. I mean, she fixed up her little tiny home. It's more than a tiny home.
All right.
It's amazing, you know. And the one thing I'd like to say too is, if you look at this compared to what you see, this is organized and it's clean.
Right,
You know, what do you want to see? Do you want to see organized? You know, it's organized.
right,
You know, whatever neighborhood it's in, it's clean. It's
Right.
organized.
right. Well, it is, and it's fascinating, and I can't wait to see inside. So I want to thank you for sitting in this beautiful sunny experience that we've just had together, and I look forward to looking around. You want to look around?
Let's do it.
All right. All right, so this particular unit's not inhabited right now, but I have to notice that for the next resident, there's some really lovely attributes available to them the second they move in.
Yeah, and these units are really quite remarkable. They're only 64 square feet, and we're sitting inside one. You'll notice there's 2 beds. There's storage that goes underneath. There's air conditioning. There's heaters. There's 3 electrical outlets. There are 4 windows for cross ventilation. There's a light for nighttime, a smoke detector, and most importantly, there's a front door that locks. And what's amazing about these units is they can be put together and installed in 90 minutes.
What?
In 90 minutes, they are put together and they are done. This entire site was built in 90 days.
Okay, so obviously pour the foundation for everything itself, but is this literally like a shed that one might buy for their backyard, but then upgraded to be humanly inhabitable?
These, yes and no. It looks like that,
Yeah.
but these are customized. And this is a fiberglass panel that is mold resistant, mildew resistant, insect resistant. The temperatures can be 110 degrees or below 0, and it can stay between 65 and 75 degrees with the heat and the air. They can withstand winds of 100 miles an hour. The life expectancy on these is about 20 years. And so very different from the shed you would buy at Home Depot.
Right.
And plus the mere fact that this is designed for emergency habitation because it does have these basic components.
Are they pricey?
$8,500.
Oh, okay.
Only $8,500, whereas when we're building the permanent housing, you're typically looking at, well, the last one that was built was over $500,000 per unit.
Right.
So this is this emergency response to get people off the streets quickly and stabilize them until we can get them into permanent housing.
So I know that with the restrictions with the pandemic, this is an opportunity for couples to have a place, and singles until the pandemic is lifted, but restrictions are lifted. But once that happens, could 2 strangers be roomies?
Yeah, right now the Department of Public Health has limited us to putting 1 person per unit unless they are a couple and or unless they're related.
Okay.
That's not going to last forever. And when that lifts, what we're going to do is we're going to work with the resident and say, look, how much does this mean to you to be able to come in out of the elements, to have your own place? If you will double up with somebody, we can help more people. So we're going to let them kind of pick their own person that they feel they can live with in a 64 square foot space without killing each other.
A little like a dorm life.
Exactly.
Okay, but there's also like starter kits that I see.
Yeah, the community at large has been so generous. We've put out on an Amazon wish list that and this one's just being turned over right now, but we'll put brand new sheets on here, blankets, pillows, and then we have wonderful people that donate. They call these blessing bags that have toothbrushes, toothpaste, soap, shampoo, razors, everything that somebody would need. And so the community has been so responsive in helping. I think people want to do something, they just don't know what to do.
Right.
And so this is very tangible, very real. We're getting people off the streets. They're getting 3 meals a day and everything that they have need of.
It's homey. It feels very calm, and are you feeling optimistic about all these?
I really am feeling optimistic. With the amount of resources that are coming to LA, the political will, the will of the people, and the numbers of providers that are rolling up their sleeves to address this issue, I am confident that over the next 12 to 24 months, we're going to see a huge change in the landscape of homelessness and getting people off the streets. And so we just got to stay the course.
As long as there aren't more that are coming, after this pandemic.
Yes.
I know we're worried about that. But if people want to help, because as you said, you could use help, although this is a public-private partnership, you need more support.
All the time. And we need volunteers, we need donations, and the easiest way for people to do that is to go to hopeofthevalley.org or give us a call, 818-392-0020.
as I say, it's quiet in, but there's a lot of activity out there today. So anyway, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks. And that's a wrap on this LA Currents.